my invitation to all of us who maybe are feeling a little bit stirred or inspired or want to be a change maker in some way is to do so from a foundation of unconditional love, respect for sovereignty, and from there we get to have our sovereignty too. Now, we live in a toxic food culture. All around us, junk foods are normalized, they're mainstreamized, they're advertised, and they're even subsidized. And so it can be difficult in that context to eat real, wholesome, healthy food. It feels like swimming upstream sometimes. And in that context, some of us feel like we've got to put on some armor in order to fight back against those systems that are constantly pulling us backwards and downwards. And that's human. And at the same time, as we become more confident and more settled in ourselves, we become more capable of becoming the big person, so to speak, which means you stand in your integrity and you also have love for other people, wherever they are in the journey. And that is when you take on a kind of potency and a kind of a dynamism that can help to move the world. And yes, as you're starting out, sometimes you don't have room for all that. You've just got to focus on get your own oxygen mask on first. Figure out how to get your own food system in order before you mess with anybody else. In that context, though, sometimes you've got to ask for help. Sometimes you've got to say, hey, look, I'm worried about my cholesterol. I'm worried about my A1C numbers. I'm worried about my life. I'd like to ask your help. I believe this diet can help me. Will you support me? Even if you don't have to do it, but will you support me, right? And sometimes people who love us, who truly love us, will show up for that. My family actually went vegan at an interesting moment. It was before my dad started writing Diet for New America. I was 10 years old, and my mom was dealing with PMS challenges. And a friend said, hey, maybe if you give up dairy, that would help. And she was like, oh, I could never give up cheese. And then my dad was like, well, how about if we do it as a family? Would that help? And I was like, wait a second, I'm part of that family. But we did. We decided to do it as a family for a month. I was like, okay, I can handle a month. So we did a month, no dairy, and my mom had a great improvement in her next cycle. Less pain, feeling more steady and balanced. And she was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I noticed something kind of cool, which is that I had always had a stuffy nose my whole life. And I had no idea that it was because of dairy. But in that month, I started being able to breathe through my nose more and smell differently. And that's when I realized that I was somewhat allergic to dairy. I never would have found out otherwise. So we were all like, okay, no going back on that. And dairy was done in our household. And this was way before there were soy cheeses, when we did learn to make yeast cheese that we still make to this day, and that's fun. It wasn't all the vegan substitutes. There's so many different options that are available now. It's easier. It wasn't so easy back then. But I think the principle that sometimes love brings us together, and it doesn't always have to be a source of division when somebody follows their integrity and their values. Sometimes it can actually be a source of liberation and connection. And I want to invite everybody here to consider that leadership takes many forms. Sometimes leadership is being in front of big stages and organizing big movements. Sometimes leadership is a simple, quiet inner voice that says, I'm willing to be true to my own conscience, regardless of all the noise out there. Sometimes leadership is being willing to follow a higher star, a deeper wisdom, listening to your integrity. And that can move the world. Because every single one of us makes choices every day. And together we shape culture, and we shift trends and norms, and we show what is possible.